Will Canadian Kids Farm Safe Week. Just to let you know, we are recording this meeting. We will be posting it on CASA's social media, YouTube, that sort of thing. So if you know anybody that would like to watch it, we'll be able to access it that way. I'm Robin Anderson. I'm with the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association. And I'd just like to welcome you all here today. We're really excited. This is our first annual Kids Farm Safe Week, Nurturing the Future of Agriculture, which is held from May 13th to the 19th. Joining us today, we have a group of amazing women that are here to talk about their experiences on the farm, safety, work, and children. What we'll be doing is having this as a meeting, and you will be muted. And if you have questions or anything like that, we just encourage you to put them in the chat, and we'll make sure that our participants get that information and answer those questions. So today we have joining us is Tabetha Boot with BASF, Bailey Kemery, a farmer and farm mom and amazing person from Saskatchewan, and Katie Keddy, a farmer, once again, an amazing person and farmer from Nova Scotia. I'm going to turn it over to Tabetha and to get started. So thank you everybody for being here today, and thank you especially to Katie, Bailey, and Tabetha.
Thank you so much, Robin. Wonderful introduction. So excited to be here with this group of people to talk about the importance of farm safety. As Robin mentioned, I'm Tabetha Boot. I am the head of communications and industry relations with BASF, and ecstatic to be the moderator here for this conversation. Farm safety is incredibly important to us, and so really happy to help facilitate this conversation and dialogue and hopefully awareness to help positively impact safety on farm. So I'm going to do some introductions, read some bios, because as Robin mentioned, these women are incredibly impressive, and if we don't take the time to read these bios, they probably won't go into it themselves. So Katie Keddy is a Nova Scotian Agricultural College graduate with a Bachelor in Science in Agriculture. Katie and her husband are second-generation farmers in Lakeville, Nova Scotia, where they grow sweet potatoes and strawberry nursery plants alongside her in-laws. Katie and her husband, Phil, were recognized as the Atlantic region's outstanding young farmers in 2020. They also raised their 2 young sons on the farm and are dedicated to having their children grow up with safety as a culture on the farm. Katie's involvement in agriculture extends beyond the farm. She is a member of various agricultural boards and committees and currently serves as the president of Farm Safety Nova Scotia. As a co-founder of the Maritime Ag Women's Network, she's helped create a platform for women in agriculture to connect and thrive. In recognition of their efforts with the Maritime Ag Women's Network, in 2022, Katie and her fellow co-founder, Amy Vanderhyde, were honored with an Excellence in Agriculture Award from Nova Scotia's Minister of Agriculture in the category of Women in Agriculture. As a parent and farmer, Katie recognizes the importance of normalizing farm safety and including it in everyday conversation. So Katie, thank you so much for being here. Bailey Kemery knows all too well the importance of farm safety. When she was 4 years old, Bailey was severely injured on her farm's grain farm in Major, Saskatchewan. The near-fatal farm accident left her with a lifelong physical challenges. Determined not to let her accident hinder her goals, Bailey became invested in helping others. After receiving a degree in psychology from the University of Calgary, Bailey went to school to become a paramedic. She now works in emergency management and provides various industries with first aid and CPR training and emergency preparedness plans. Bailey is also passionate about farm safety, an advocate, a public speaker who strives to teach others how a single choice can affect the rest of your lives. Bailey and her husband raised their 3 children on her family's grain farm. And as a farm accident survivor, safety advocate, and parent, Bailey believes in being open and honest with her kids about farm safety. So welcome. I'm so ecstatic to have the 2 of you here to chat about farm safety and some of your thoughts and observations and considerations to share with this broader group. So I've read official bios, but I would love to turn it over to each of you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, and in particular why child farm safety is so important to you. So maybe I'll start with you, Katie.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me here this afternoon. It's definitely a subject that I'm passionate about. A little bit more about us, I guess. In addition to my husband and my in-laws on the farm, we also employ offshore labor. So we have employees from Mexico and from Jamaica, and in addition to our local labor. So in our high season, we can have approximately 80 people around the farm. Our days are, typical farmer days can be 14, 15, 16-hour long days. So safety became more than just about us as a family. For me, it really took a forefront when I had toddlers running around the farm and was trying to balance being a farmer and being a mom and still having work to do, and how am I going to raise these little people so that they love the farm and can participate in the farm, but also recognizing we run a business, and how do you make all of that work safely?
Yeah, a lot of pieces and perspectives and awareness levels, as you say.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Bailey, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why safety is so important to you?
Well, every day I live in just normalized chaos. So I pretty much make a living of organizing that chaos. And it's funny how, as a kid, you grow up on the farm and you have like this great experience, and, it shifts over, you become a parent and you have kids on the farm. And it's amazing how you just have this selflessness towards your kids. And, experiencing an accident myself, I know the repercussions of that. I know how important it is to um, keep your kids safe, because at the end of the day, if our kids aren't safe, the family farm can't survive. And I mean, for us, that's so important because we are like just a pure family farm. My brother kind of does all of the everything, and we kind of follow with his plans. And, he's got a purpose for everybody. Everyone plays a very important role, whether that be, me or my husband or my mom and my dad, but my kids also, play a role in one way or another, whether it's actively being on like the farm, or if it's just those kids, being safe and in school and whatever else, because, our goal is to keep the land within the family, because I mean, it's so easy to not have that opportunity or to lose it. Of course, it's land is very expensive, and nothing is more important than seeing that succession for us, especially. So I mean, that's a huge part of that farm safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come back to your experience a little bit later, but just to sort of couch this conversation, we're in the middle of Child Farm Safe Week, which is the inaugural week. It's a national awareness week, and it really stemmed from it was born out of a Canadian Agricultural Injury Report. And this report really highlighted that while ag-related fatalities are declining kind of across age groups, the age group of 14 and under hasn't been declining as much, and it's actually seen a very small decline. And so that's obviously a big issue, that while farm safety or farm safety is improving, it's not improving for our children. So I guess my question to both of you is, did this result or this report surprise you at all? And if yes or if no, with this information, how important is a national kid farm safety week? Katie, I'll start with you.
Sure. I want to say yes and no to being surprised. I think if I say yes, I am surprised, that is because the conversations in our lives and on our farm, we've been so very black and white with our kids as to choices versus consequences, and what the absolute worst consequences can be based on their choices and how we're having these conversations. So we've tried to change the safety culture on our farm and make it a norm. Now, across the board, as chair of Farm Safety Nova Scotia, we know that's not the case on every farm. Intentional or unintentional. It just, until you really embrace the culture of safety on the farm, it doesn't take a priority in your mind. So yeah, it's kind of twofold, like surprise, because I do feel like safety conversations are happening more frequently, but also not, because traditionally agriculture hasn't been an industry where we prioritize safety and we prioritize those conversations. Work comes first because it has to, it's our business. And to speak to Bailey's point about succession, we have to prioritize that way. But now it's becoming, to be relevant to employees, to be relevant as a business, you have to prioritize safety. It is something that employees coming to look at your farm expect, not just a suggestion. They expect you now to prioritize the fact that at the end of the day, they're going home to their families as well.
Yeah, very, very good comment. It's as you were saying, you have 80 people from different countries, probably all with a different mindset when they come in, but that expectation of being able to go home to their family, that's shared by everyone.
Yeah.
Bailey, so over to you. I'll reiterate the question. Did the report findings surprise you, and in connection, how important is a national awareness week like this to you?
Zero surprise, actually. This actually makes a lot of sense, in the sense that we are such an old school type of thinking that it's like, well, we did this the way forever and ever and blah blah blah, and our kids survived and whatever else, and it's like, cool. I mean, that's survivor's bias. But at the end of the day, people won't make change until it becomes really relatable to them, and that's just the crappy part, where we are such a retroactive lawmaking society versus a proactive. So it takes critical incidences to happen before we do make that change. I mean, that's kind of the whole basis of, emergency preparedness. Like, we had this situation, we weren't prepared, we have to be prepared for it better next time. And it's unfortunate that we carry that same mentality over to the farm too. Because we do expect a lot of our kids are like, growing up on a farm is not only one of the most rewarding experiences, but it's one of the hardest places to raise your families, because your work and your home life are blurred in a really unsafe way that you can't separate those. And we do expect a lot of our kids, and our kids are expected to mature a little bit faster and have an understanding. And at the end of the day, some of these kids are, young kids. I mean, my youngest, he's just turning 4 tomorrow, actually. So, for him, it's just like, I love the farm. Like, I love tractors. I love anything that has wheels and that can move. And I want to be a part of that. And we almost feed upon that wrong, where we think, oh, they love tractors, let's get them running a tractor at a young age, when in reality, that's probably not the right call. I mean, who might have judged as a parent? But, we do the best we can with the situation that's provided to us. But I don't understand why we have to wait until kids get hurt before we start making those active changes. I'm really fortunate in the sense too, where, I do have an experience, and, I have lots of scars and things that make kids see that, and it's a little bit more real for them, so they can understand a little bit more. Like, they don't fully understand it, because at the end of the day, they're kids. But I think as a society, we need to understand too that what we used to do maybe necessarily isn't the right way. I mean, we used to put heroin in our cough syrup. That doesn't necessarily make it correct anymore. We evolve, because at the end of the day, if we don't evolve, we go extinct. So those are pretty much kind of the two options when it comes to our ideologies. We're getting better. I mean, like, it's funny to see the transition from my parents versus to when I had, or, when I was a kid, because obviously my parents didn't like me because they didn't care if I wore a helmet. But it's funny how that transition with the grandkids, like, that's such a big momentum. They're so safety oriented, and it's not that, they didn't like us as kids. It's just they didn't really understand or know better. But, my accident definitely expedited that process, where this is realistic and it's going to happen, and it will happen again unless we take proactive steps. So, I mean, that's ultimately why it's just kind of not surprising for me we're getting
Yeah.
better, but we have a long ways to go.
Yeah, you said a few things there, and you referenced your injury. So I for people that don't know, can you share us with us what happened to you? And then I'm going to move into kind of the topic of moving away from the way that we always did things into this topic of prioritizing and normalizing. So let's kind of do the historical, and Bailey, share with us, if you don't mind, your experience.
Yeah, for sure. April 21st, 1994, I was involved in a really terrible farm accident. I was 4 years old at the time. And my brother and I were playing on the rototiller. I was running, it wasn't in gear or anything. My brother and I were sitting on it. It had one of those like gear sticks like in the middle, so really easy to kick. So it was kicked forward. My brother went forward, I went back. Went into the PTO, went into the rotors. So of course, I was shredded essentially, for kind of lack of better explanation. And luckily somehow I survived. I do actually thank my mom quite a bit for that. It's funny, I do remember her telling me one time, I had just taken my first aid course, a few weeks prior to that. So, I mean, that's another reason why it's very important for me to pass on that first aid training knowledge to a lot of people. So, years of therapy, rehabilitation, being told of my limitations, this isn't going to happen for you. You may never walk, you might not have kids, or blah, 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 all sorts of things. It really impacted my life for sure. But, it's funny because it was just kind of a 1-second thing, and my life was just totally changed. It wasn't even my life. It was my brother's life. It was my parents' life. And it's something that, however many years, 30 years later, it's still ongoing, and this isn't something that's ever going to end for me. And I'm fortunate I survived. And my story is rare in the sense that I did survive. But I mean, at what cost did that survival come at? What kind of arthritic pain am I suffering, at, 34 years of age? Am I still having mobility issues? Am I having back issues, fertility issues, things like that. So it's very ongoing. It's not something that'll ever end. And I really would love to end that trauma with myself, but that's just kind of not the reality of it. But the more I speak about it, hopefully the more relatable the experience can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that speaks to the comment of the importance of normalizing and bringing, kind of making some changes and breaking the habit and forming new mindsets, and having that safety first mindset as a way that we approach every day.
Just breaking the cycle.
Sorry?
Just breaking the cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah, that better terminology. So to that, breaking the cycle and prioritizing safety, what are both of your approaches in normalizing farm safety for your kids? Maybe I'll stay with you and then move to you, Katie.
I just have conversations every day. Like, it's just a matter of, this is what I expect of you. And of course, kids are like, well, I want to do more. I want to be more involved. So kids do want to be involved. So you just give them appropriate tasks for their age. That's great. You want to be involved. So right now I need you to sweep off this deck. That is going to be your role today. And that's how you're going to contribute to the farm and the success of that farm. And as like minor as that is, it's really important for them. Because I think just being told, no, don't touch it, stay away, like, kids are funny little creatures, they will never do what they're told anyway. So it's kind of giving them those, like, I'm not going to say menial tasks, but giving them a purpose that is safe for them. And my kids too on the farm, like, our roles for them are, you're gardening, we're going to be pulling weeds, we're going to be planting seeds, we're going to be, picking carrots, and we're going to be doing things like that. Even though it's not like the massive grain farm, it's still a farm in their mind. And I mean, we have chickens and ducks, and we have a goose and goats and things like that. And, pretty chill farm animals. And our kids' responsibility is picking eggs, making sure that those chickens have enough water, and do they need feed? Are the goats' heads stuck in the fence? Because that happens a lot. The kids will come running, the goat's head's in the fence again. Okay, well, let's go rescue them. So it gives them a purpose. And I think that that's more important than anything, because I think that we often think that their purpose has to be much bigger, but it really doesn't. And I have a lot of friends that say too, at what age, can my kid cut the grass. It's like, well, when they sit on the lawnmower, do they trigger the safety switch because they're not heavy enough? Because like that's probably a good indication that they're probably not old enough or not ready for it physically, or physiologically. So yeah, that's kind of the only thing that I can say is just they have a role, just giving them the appropriate role.
Yeah, that's a really good comment of the, breaking it down into the baby steps, and they have a role and a purpose, and can build from there.
Well, and
To
they have
get to
attention spans of squirrels. So, I mean, they're going to do something and they're going to get bored really quickly and they're going to see the sand pit and they're going to be like, I'm going to go dig a hole in the sand again. Cool. You know what? But it's still like an appropriate task for them.
Yeah, totally. So, Katie, how about you? What's your approach to normalizing farm safety?
I'll echo some of what Bailey said. It really becomes about having those conversations be normal conversations every single day, with every single task. We're dealing with large equipment and chemicals and people and ship, 18 wheelers coming in and out. And there is a lot that goes on a large commercial farm. One thing I started, so my kids are 9 and 11. I love seeing that safety vest behind you. We required them when they were smaller at all times to have that on, whether they were in the field with our guys or even just in the farm office and potentially, could go to the bathroom or whatever. We have forklifts and everything. One thing we started when they were little is to put everybody holds accountability for safety on the farm. It is a responsibility of everyone on the farm. We taught them when they were little to keep your ears open and to keep your eyes open. Whether it's you're with mom in the middle of the day and I'm right there, but at all times you need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be listening for sounds. You need to know who's around you and what's around you. The other thing, having multiple employees, is we never, everybody, as I said before, everybody's responsibility is their own safety. You look out for other people, but if everyone is being safe in their jobs in the moment, then that creates a safe work environment in general. Obviously accidents happen, as it takes a second, as Bailey said, for something to happen. But ultimately, every day in every job, we're just trying to normalize the conversations. As I said before, we're very black and white with what the results of not being safe or not knowing or doing something that you don't know how to do because you're 11 and know more already than your parents. And
I think that just gets worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I agree with Bailey too, giving them age appropriate tasks makes a lot of sense because they do want to be involved. My kids are very money focused, so they want to be earning money now. So it's giving them tasks. And sometimes those tasks that may be a little bit more difficult, well, then you give them to them with the support at appropriate times that isn't in the middle of a working day. So if my 11-year-old is keen to go try harrowing, well, then we'll do that in the evening when we're in the buddy seat in an open field, nobody else is around, and we're there with you. This is the only time. Do not touch the equipment or turn the equipment on when you're not, with us. So it really is every day. It's conversations. And the other thing I find is helpful too is when parents do have supporters of safety around them, because man, kids get tired of hearing their parents, don't do this, this is going to happen to you. So when you have people echoing the same talks and the same safety culture as a whole in your business, it helps facilitate that in their heads as well, because it's not just my mom being an overprotective mom or my dad not just wanting my help today. This is the expectations of how we run our business and the expectations everybody has. We are held to the same level as everybody else.
Yeah, it's a really good comment about the importance of that culture and making it just the way that we operate, not just something that mom and dad make us do. One of the things that I want to pick up on, you mentioned about the everyday conversations and keeping it incredibly top of mind. So digging into the report, one of the things that I found significant is that some of the most significant risks for children under 4 is being run over, and that's actually one of the biggest connection points to fatality. Without being, scary or being too graphic, like how straight up are you with the real dangers, and do you kind of I don't know. I'm curious about your approach. Like how real do you get with your kids, and at what age, and can you expand on that? Katie, I'll start with you.
We're pretty scary and graphic, because that's the impact of a momentary mistake, is that it's scary and it's impactful, and these are the consequences of it. And probably when my kids were younger, in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm being too much. But now that they're a little bit older, I don't even have a second thought that I was too much, or too much information, or scarred them for later, if any of that. I think it's very real risks. And like Bailey, you said earlier, we expect our kids to mature faster on the farm, and it really is they do, and we do expect it of them, because it's such a risky life that we lead, a life we love, and a privileged life, and a life we want them to love, but it is risky every day. So it's black for us, it's black and white. There is no gray in the middle. It has to be black and white. Or how would I, if something happened,
Yeah,
I would, I would carry that anyways, but I know our conversations are black and white at this point. Yeah.
No, that transparency, right? Of just, these are the realities. Bailey, how about you? How do you approach things on your farm?
Oh, well, we don't really beat around the bush. Kids are pretty resilient, and they understand a lot more than we give them credit for. And Katie, you've got older kids. I've got young kids. So my youngest is going to be 4, my middle child is 5, and my oldest is 6, going to be 7 here. Clearly we made poor life choices and had kids that close together. But that's a challenge in itself, as I have 3 really little kids that I'm trying to manage, which doesn't go easily. But there are a lot of things that happen on the farm that we take advantage of. We lost a goat to goat polio. We have those conversations too, and like, this is what happens. We just, something we missed. And or we lost a really good farm cat. He got squashed on the road. That was a perfect opportunity to talk about road safety. It's like, that's what happened to our cat Warren. Like, that could happen to you guys. That's the reality of it, and they understand that, and it's more relatable. It's like, this is what happened, and we understand that there's cause and effect. It takes a long time to kind of perfect that skill, but repetitious conversations, like Katie say, was good too. And it's not even just conversations, it's actual physically doing things. Now, I can't expect my kids to be safe if I'm doing stupid things. And that's just what it comes down to. Like, if I'm on a sled or a quad or a side by side, I'm wearing a helmet, because how can I expect my kids to wear one if I'm not wearing a helmet? At the end of the day, it's just the smarter way to go about it. Or, if I have to do something, maintenance or whatever, like I'm powering the machine down or whatever, like, especially the lawnmower, like, I'm not going to get off the lawnmower with the blade still going. I'm going to power that PTO down, pick up the golf ball that's in the middle of the yard that the kids threw there. Like, they have to see us do this before they do it. And then giving them, again, the opportunity to help make those choices. What do you think we could do here? And they give it a suggestion. Do you think that's the safest thing we could do? Maybe there's something else, we could do to make it a little bit safer. But making them a part of that choice also helps too, because it gives them power over what's going to happen, and it doesn't make them feel like a baby. And maybe that's part of that whole maturing faster too, is we're not making decisions for them, we're having a part of that decision making process. And at the end of the day, it's going to be more meaningful to them, because they are a part of it. It's part of their responsibility, and they want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of the family. They want to contribute one way or another, and sometimes making those basic decisions can help.
No, that's a really good comment. I love the importance of that you highlighted, of leading by example. and then also using those teachable moments. And so I guess one of my questions is, I'm going to link it a little bit. One of the questions we talked about was how do you involve your kids in understanding and taking responsibility for your safety? I'm going to pivot a little bit on with the teachable moments and helping the audience and people that watch this at a future time. What tools do you rely on or do you use to help seize those teachable moments and involve your kids so that they take responsibility of safety from a young age?
I mean, just almost just taking advantage of the life experiences that happen. But one of the things I really loved was the safety kit that you guys had. You can see the vest back there. I know that sometimes too, as a parent, it can become overwhelming because there's so many dangers on the farm. It's like, where do I start? But sometimes having those tools, like those, farm safety kits that they send home, it's a good starting point. It's like, oh yeah, that's definitely a danger. And this is a good way to kind of talk about it. And then it gives them an introduction. And then they could say to you later, oh, this was in the picture. It's like, yeah, totally. We know we don't touch those chemicals. We understand that this is a poison symbol and that, we stay away from that. I know that just kind of starting that process again, it feels really overwhelming. So it's nice just to have those things. There are a lot of resources on the internet, but there's also a lot of great resources that are out there too. Like I said, the farm safety program box with the kids that came with the vest, because for them, that was the bee's knees having their own vests, right? So kids love anything kind of flashy and just, feeling important like that. But there are always things that happen. It's just you as a parent sometimes need to recognize that, hey, this is a good opportunity to have a question. Even wearing Crocs out, watering the garden and slipping, it's like, all right, why did I slip? Maybe I wasn't wearing the right shoes. As much as I love to throw on those slippery, worn out shoes, at the end of the day, you probably could have wear something better. And my oldest, she picks up all the time. Well, Mom, why weren't you wearing your runners? Good question, kid. Like, it just, you know what? I had a moment, and thank you for reminding me. And having kids call you out on it is actually really good for them too, because it's good for you as a parent to, remember that your kids are always watching you, but it's also good for them. It's like they're recognizing that something could have been improved upon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful to hear. Your kids are I think, yeah, fostering the safe space, creating opportunity for dialogue, and them not being shy to be like, hey, wait a minute, Mom, here's an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
Katie, how about you? Do you have any favorite tools or resources that you pull on to help have those conversations?
I've taken advantage of similar, like the resources through CASA, but a lot of it becomes the everyday conversation and taking those few extra moments. If you see somebody doing unsafe, as Bailey mentioned before, checking yourself in the moment and making sure you're following procedures and setting a good example for your kids as well. The other thing we have been fortunate in our area is progressive agriculture safety days. Have happened locally to us a few times, and I send my kids to that every time. If it's within even an hour and a half, I will drive them to go to that every single time that we can, while they're the ages that they can, because they come home from that very empowered. It's other people having these conversations. That's not me. And it's done in a fun, engaging way with their peers. And not always 100% farm focused either. It's life focused, but all of the tools they take away apply back to the farm. And the few times I've sent my kids there, they come back super pumped up, super energized, ready to teach me and my husband everything that we never knew, we didn't know. And I've just found it very empowering for them. So like I said, we're really fortunate where we are in Nova Scotia that we've been able to access that program a few different times across the country. I hope in most areas it's also equally as accessible, because it is very well done and very beneficial.
I couldn't agree more, Katie. So there's a shout out for the team at CASA who helped support those progressive ag safety days across the country. So one of the questions, just building on the tools and the conversations that we're having, In terms of like the physical environment, have you made changes to your farm to protect or separate your kids from farm operation spaces? Is that practical? Is that possible? Let's unpack that kind of safe zone concept. Katie, let's start with you.
I think it's changed. Our situation has changed over the years. I was full-time on farm for about 8 years. I'm now working off farm. COVID threw a big wrench into everything for farm families in there too. So I think for us, it's changed quite a bit depending on the year and depending on the age of the kids. We live off farm, but still on a larger property. So if we're outside in the evening, we're sort of isolated from the main farm area. So it gives a little bit of separation, which, we're still rural. So there's still rural risks in there too, but it depends on the kids too. And we have constant conversations with our boys. Like, if you're not being responsible at home, and if you're not showing maturity at home, and if you're not listening when we are speaking, like, your ability to go and hang out at the farm and do those things that you want to do and grow into those roles will be impeded. I don't have time to mess around. If I say no on the farm, it's because I'm saying no for a reason and because it can have detrimental impacts. So I think a lot of that is very situational to the farmer, to the farm, to the people, to the business, and to the location. But yeah, like there's not one clear, straight answer to that question, I would say.
Yeah. Bailey, how about you? What are your thoughts on kind of safe zone slash the mix between just the different zones, I guess, so to speak, on the farm?
So I guess becoming a parent, it's funny how you become so selfless and like your world just revolves around your kids. And we don't live on the main farm. That's actually where my parents' farm is, so that really makes a difference. But I mean, we still have equipment that comes in the yard and whatnot. We put up, you can judge me, but 500 feet of chain link fence actually around our safe play area, where we have like the playhouse and the play structure, and they're climbing rock wall and their favorite tree and whatever else. So they know that that is their safe play. We do have a lot of hazards at our farm. I mean, we're right next to a busy road. We are right next to a large dugout. So there's a lot of different things. But again, we take them to the dugout because, of course, we scoop the salamanders out of our little pond and we take them to the dugout. So, we have the conversations about how dangerous it is, or even skating on the dugout in winter. And, like having them a part of that, we're going to check the ice and this is why we're doing this. And, this is what makes it unsafe. And this is things we're looking for. And you never come out here without adults. I mean, at the end of the day, those can still go wrong and kids are going to do what they're going to do. But I think just repetition is really one of the best ways to do it. And we have safe spaces for them to play, and there's lots of opportunities for them to, be in that space, but there's also the opportunity for them to leave that space because they're going to get bored and they're going to do what they do. And I guess that's the toughest part about it. Sometimes you can have everything just checked off and everything perfect, but stuff still happens. But I mean, at the end of the day, we can predict as many situations in hazardous areas as we can. But having kids involved in that, I think, is just going to be the best way to maybe combat that. Because even my oldest, she's quite a maternal little thing. And, she'll say to her younger siblings, like, no, can't do that. That's unsafe. Or, she'll kind of tattle a little bit on her younger siblings. I know someone said to her once, don't be a tattletale. And I was like, nope, I want them to be tattletales because I need to know what they're doing and, the thought process that's going through their head. Because, my youngest, my son, he's just like all over the place and he's sometimes hard to kind of keep contained. And so it's just nice to have that relationship with my oldest kid where she understands and she can communicate that to us too. So in even times when we're going out and we have to be away, like we'll have walkie talkies. So like, if I'm cutting the grass and the kids are in the house, we have the walkie-talkie, and my oldest will message like, this is what's going on or whatever. We're still learning on what an emergency is, because oftentimes I'll get the message like, Mom, bad news. And I'm like, what's going on? Hazel fell off the couch again, So still learning, but it's a work in progress for sure.
That's awesome. So one of the things that I want to ask about is the challenges. So we talked about some of the resources that exist, and that shifting the mindset and breaking patterns. But what do you think are some of the current existing challenges that we need to be mindful of to then come up with solutions for in terms of improving farm safety for children? Bailey, I'll keep you talking.
So community, I think, is the biggest thing, because at the end of the day, my biggest obstacle is childcare. Sometimes we're in a position where we got to bring the kids on the equipment, and that's not ideal by any means, but like, what do you do? I mean, my closest daycare is 30 minutes away, and it's just not always easy for me to get them to daycare, especially if I have to book them in and the daycare is full or whatever else. And we have some neighbor kids actually who are good farm kids, and sometimes they'll nanny too, and that really makes a difference. But that is my biggest obstacle. But having the community involved makes a huge difference. And what's really nice too is even like our bus drivers and our schools are so involved, because we were farming out in a field just kind of away from the yard, and I realized, holy crap, I forgot to tell the bus driver I'm not home. So there I am, texting the bus driver. I'm sitting in the grain cart. It was harvest time. And I was like, can you drop her off at this field? She's like, oh yeah, no problem. So then, I'm standing on the road. Bus driver pulls off. Lila gets off the bus. Kate, we're going to have to be on this piece of equipment. Dad's going to be home in like 15 minutes. So you're going to have to go with that here. So then, that I think is a huge success. And that really helps just the community being so supportive, especially for us young families, because as much as we want to succeed on the family farm, they also want us to succeed on the family farm. And there's always lots of people who say, if you need help, like, let me know. And I know often I'm my own worst enemy, and I'm like, nah, I got this, I can do it all, but like, I can't. So it's like, for me, reaching out of my comfort zone and being like, I do need help, and I need, if someone could help me or whatever. And I mean, my parents are great too, but often they're involved in the farm or they're on a piece of machinery. So my kids take turns with grandma and grandpa, and grandpa has better snacks, but grandma has better activities. So there's always that discussion, but it is a family community thing.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful point. It's that whole "it takes a village" comment. Yeah, it definitely takes community. Katie, how about you? Challenges that you see that we need to focus on to remove to help improve farm safety for kids?
I 100% will echo childcare until the end of my days. It is incredibly stressful and such a barrier for young families right now. We're getting to the point now where we can leave our oldest home alone, and that it's like slowly this weight is lifting. But like Bailey said, we really relied a lot on our community for a long time, and we have a close family near us, and we joke now that we're co-parenting our children together. They're not farmers, but they grew up in a farm situation and grew up with farming families, so they get it and they know. And I am internally grateful for other families in the same position who can offer that support and who can be there. But childcare, the accessibility and in a lot of times even the cost is a huge barrier and a huge challenge towards families. The other thing we talk about, we focus a lot on physical safety and those physical risks on the farm. The part we don't talk a lot about with our farm kids is mental health and wellness and that side of safety. We talk about our kids maturing faster. They're maturing faster because they have risky decisions, and that separation between farm and family is non-existent or just not easy. But these kids also hear a lot and they see a lot, and they feel the stress of a bad year, and they're by nature involved in conversations with within families, and the tension and the stress that can lay between grandparents and the next generation. And there's so much that these kids carry, that it creates resilience in them, it creates this maturity, but we just haven't addressed that side so much, as challenges for farm kids in agriculture.
Yeah, I think that is an incredibly important point to focus on, because so often with safety, it's the short-term safety and the immediate impact and the physical shift that can happen. But the unseen
Yeah.
can often not be addressed the way that it should be, and be made seen. So I mean, there is a question that we have that was about the amount of work and attention paid to mental health amongst adults on the farm, which obviously is incredibly important. But to your point, Katie, about mental health for children on the farm, is there, do you notice a difference, or what, I don't know, what conversations do you have with your kids to create that safe space to talk about how they're feeling, and emotions, and those sorts of things that again create the space, so that hopefully through adulthood you can identify from an early point when you might need help, to then know how to get those resources.
Yeah. And I'm not perfect by any means. We're certainly not perfect in this regard, because I do find it challenging as a parent to navigate that. We have open conversations and validate emotions and recognize the stress. If I know they've overheard a conversation between myself and my husband that maybe seems stressful, or have been in the office when a disagreement has happened between those present in the office, then we'll revisit that and we'll talk about it. And I've also reached out sometimes through our school system and said, it's been stressful. Do you mind having a few check-in sessions with my child, and taking advantage of those resources if they're recognizing school resources are also terribly depleted right now. We're very lucky at our school that we have this, and taking advantage of it that way. The other part is your mental health can impact your physical awareness on the farm as well. If you're not if you're not rested, if you're not aware, if you are anxious or distracted, that's also times where you may just in that minute second not be paying attention, that your mental and physical health have to go hand in hand, as one big picture, and can't necessarily separate one from the other, as we so often do in these conversations.
Yeah, that's an excellent comment. Just how just like farm life and home life bleeds together, so do mental and physical health. Bailey, do you have anything that you wanted to add or comment on the topic?
I mean, at the end of the day, like Katie said, validating how they're feeling. I mean, if you have an animal that dies or something that happens, like, yeah, like it is sad. You're totally right. That's an appropriate emotion. Or, you are angry because, you're not allowed to go on this tractor today. Again, I understand that you're really disappointed and you're angry about that. And I guess giving them power over the emotions. But I think where we're gonna see that shift in society is, like, again, as parents or adults, is like we need to talk about it a little bit more often. And I know that, we're all like pro mental health right now, and that's super great, but like changing your profile picture to reflect your pro mental health, that's not change. Like, until we actually physically start talking about it and, bringing awareness to it, and just like having those conversations every single day. I mean, that's where we're going to see that true change, whether it's for us as adults, but for us as kids even. And I mean, the idea is to always keep that momentum moving forward. I mean, we are better than we were parents, who are better than our grandparents, but our kids are going to be even better, assuming that we just keep that forward momentum actually happening. I speak a lot on mental health, and I'm asked a lot to speak quite about it too. And maybe like I have somewhat unpopular opinions, but things like mental health, anxiety, depression, suicide, I know they make people violently uncomfortable, but it's because you don't talk about it enough. And that's just the simple truth of it. I mean, you're never too young to have those conversations with your kids. We often try to shelter them, and I don't understand that, because kids have anxiety, kids have depression, kids have whatever else. And like, as much as no one's going to like what I say next, kids have suicidal thoughts. It's a very normal part of just being human, but we have to give them the tools to navigate that, because Lord knows Google is not a good resource for kids, and they have that access where we as kids maybe didn't have that much. But we got to have those conversations, because it's not Google's job to teach my kids about their emotions and suicide and mental health and whatever else. That's my job as a parent. As comfortable as it may be, it is important that, we keep on those conversations. We are getting better. We just have a long ways to go. But if I can't vocalize how I'm feeling to my husband in front of my kids, I really can't expect any better from them. So that's just kind of our biggest kind of tool for that, is just having those conversations. I'm feeling this way. Or if I yell, and like, I try not to be a yelly parent, but like, break the cycle. I just explain to my kids, this is why I behaved the way I did. It's not right, and I'm sorry, but this is why I overreacted, because I was scared. And again, giving them insight to why my reaction was maybe a little elevated at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a number of incredibly poignant things there. And if I may tease out just a couple of nuggets, the concept of like the importance of having those conversations and naming emotions, just like we name where it's safe to play, or where it's not safe to play. And from the physical side, I don't think people, perhaps, and as you say, kind of as we continue in our quest for improvement, the importance of naming an emotion, and having our kids practice that, and then even getting to that next one level of like, I'm feeling angry, and then one level down of, okay, well, what's the sub anger, and the practice of that from a young age to help name what you feel, and recognize that, to then look at how to get out of that state, or improve where you're at. I commend you for getting your kids involved in really talking about how they're feeling, and naming those emotions. Katie, did you have it? Sorry, go ahead.
If you name it, you tame it.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. One of the questions I'm noticing that just popped into the chat is, are there any organizations in your area that work to create community supports for families with young children on the farm? Or is this not really practical?
So I can speak to that a little bit with the creation of the Maritime Ag Women's Network. So I will say in general, no, that has not been my experience. When Amy and I had attended Atlantic Farm Women's Conference years ago, and that was really our first experience with that like-minded community, and a room of people who really understood us as young moms and what we were going through. And so we created this network out of not wanting to lose that connection. And then through that, we thought, 15, 20 people, and it's grown to, there's well over 1,000 women in the Maritimes now. And that, in our actual community, other than the network we've created ourselves, no, but this online community has brought that for us, other than like that physical support. You can, have somebody come and, call somebody and they're going to be there for you in your home, kind of thing. But we found that through this online community and that it normalized everything that we felt was a struggle, or like, why is this so hard, and why can't we find a group of people who can help support each other? And you hear a lot of that discussion through women in agriculture is, you hear it takes a village, and it feels like there's less and less village to lean on, by nature of people need to work longer, and people aren't retiring as soon, for grandparents, for example. Most women are now either on the farm or in the workplace. It's just our village is smaller than it used to be, and it can be very isolating and very lonely.
Well, and it speaks to the importance of the Maritime Women Network that you formed. So thank you for leading the way there. Bailey, how about you? How do you find things in Saskatchewan?
Well, where we are specifically, there's not a lot of resources, or at least formal resources. I mean, our best resource is our village, I guess. You know, if I have situations or concerns, you know, I often text neighbors. It's like, hey, like, what do you do? You know, like, what are your thoughts on this? So, you know, sometimes our parents will say, yeah, like, you know, I've tried this and, you know, works, or this doesn't work. And unfortunately, just trial and error. It would be nice to have something a little bit more formal. Probably not realistic though. I mean, we live in such an isolated area where, you know, just getting basic services sometimes to us is almost impossible. And, you know, Katie talked about the school system. I mean, right now our teachers are striking, you know, fighting for more services, OT, speech, you know, psych, and all sorts of stuff for our kids, and, you know, having a good ratio in the classroom, getting more support for those kids with, you know, ADHD, praxia, or, you know, anything like that. We're not seeing a lot of it, but I'm very fortunate that I do have a good community around us, and my husband too. I mean, he's a great resource. You know, my mom's a good resource. It's probably not sustainable, but in the future, I would like to see something. It's just right now we don't have anything. It is a good question, but, you know, just kind of have nothing at this moment.
Yeah. I'm noticing the time. We only have 5 minutes left. This has been a phenomenal conversation, so thank you both. But what I want to do is give you the last few minutes for and any additional comments or things that we perhaps didn't touch on that you would like to share, or even just a summary of your thoughts of the conversation that left this last hour. This is a tricky one because it's like, who do I put on the spot the most? Does anybody want to go first, or shall I?
I can go quick here.
Thank you, Katie.
I think as moms, we strive for perfection in everything we do when it comes to our kids. And I know when my kids were Bailey's kids' age, and I was really like, oh my, like, we need to make sure these kids are safe on the farm and all the time. And I felt like it all fell on my shoulders. I carried a lot of anxiety around it, and I felt like I was alone in trying to change this whole culture. And that's where the consistent conversations and involving everyone in your business and making safety a culture helped just relieve some of that weight that was solely on my shoulders in that moment, and in my personal experience. So, you know, strive for perfection, but grant yourself some grace too, that you're dealing with little people who don't want to listen and who think they know more than you, and you are doing your best at the end of the day, and utilize the resources and utilize the people and the community that is out there, whether it's Provincially or CASA or anyone, for help and for guidance and for support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. Very, very well said. Bailey, how about you? Any parting thoughts?
I think at the end of the day, I think parents really kind of just need a hard truth. And I know, again, it's kind of an unpopular opinion, but you don't get to be negligently responsible for a decision. You don't get to do that. You don't get to decide. For me, especially as a kid, you know, like, you may struggle to have kids, you could get injured because of whatever. We have to understand that our actions have consequences, and those consequences will never end. If we are fortunate enough to survive, that survival does come with a very, very big implication. And I mean, it's not just the physical, it is the emotional aspect of it. I've been dealing with this for 30 years. I'm going to deal with this for the rest of my life. People need to understand how solid that actually is and how that's going to carry forward. So we are the change. We have to make that choice. And until we physically start making those changes, our kids aren't going to have a better future. So we are responsible for that ultimately. Like I said, we are getting better, and, you know, there's a lot of really great things. I speak often with the Discovery Days with the University of Saskatchewan Agriculture Program. And it's funny, you know, the kids are like, we know everything. And then we do the program and it's like, maybe we don't, you know. So it is a humbling experience for them, and kids need to be humbled, but parents also need to be humbled too. And that's, you know, where my speech, my, you know, perspective is really important, I think, is because it is a humbling experience for these people to realize, holy crap, like, this is real. Like, it absolutely could happen, and the effects are not great.
Yeah, absolutely. we're almost at time. Before I pass it back to Robin, I just want to say, Katie, Bailey, it's been an absolute pleasure for me. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with the group and the group that will watch this, in the next couple of days, weeks, and months and years, I'm sure. Thank you for sharing your perspective and for your time. Robin, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, I just want to say thank you for such an interesting and dynamic conversation. There were so many great things being said. We were trying to pop up as many resources and links as we could in the chat, as you were just mentioning so many fantastic things. So thank you so much to all of Katie, Bailey, and to you, Tabetha. And I also wanted to say thank you to BASF for being the presenting sponsor for the first Kids Farm Safe Week. We're eternally grateful, and we're so happy that we're able to shine this light on the future of agriculture, our children. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We will be popping this up on our socials, and please check out the website and to get your own vest as well through the BASF Safety Scouts program. So thank you everyone, and have a really safe, wonderful season. Take care.
All the best, everyone.
Thanks.